Many centuries ago, in what is now southern Nigeria, there existed a powerful and well-organized African civilization known as the Benin Kingdom. The people who lived there were called the Edo people, and they were ruled by wise and spiritual kings known as Obas. The Benin Kingdom was one of the oldest and most respected kingdoms in West Africa, with a history that went back over 1,000 years. The city of Benin, also known as Benin City, was the heart of the kingdom. It was famous for its strong army, its advanced system of government, its beautiful bronze and ivory art, and the discipline of its citizens. Visitors who entered Benin City were often surprised by its orderliness and planning. The houses were neatly arranged, the streets were wide and clean, and the palace of the Oba stood proudly at the center of it all. But among all the great things that the Benin people built, one of the most extraordinary was the Sacred Walls of Benin, also called the Benin Moat or Iya. These massive earthworks were not just ordinary walls. They represented the heart, soul, and sacred protection of the entire kingdom. Historians today describe them as one of the largest man-made structures ever built in history. The idea to build the sacred walls began as early as the 10th century, during the time of the early rulers known as the Ogizos. The first Ogizo, Ogizo Igodo, was said to have laid the foundation for the city's organization. However, it was during the time of later rulers, especially Oba Ewedo, who ruled around 1255 to 1280 AD, and Oba Ogwola, who ruled around 1280 to 1295 AD, that the vision of the walls became reality. The Obas were not just political leaders, they were also spiritual protectors of the people. They believed that the city must be both physically and spiritually guarded. Oba Ogwola, a great builder and warrior, saw that enemies and raiders often attacked nearby towns. So he commanded his people to build strong earth walls and deep moats around the capital city to keep invaders away. But the walls were not only meant for defense, they were also built to show the greatness of Benin and the divine authority of the Oba. The construction was seen as a sacred duty, a symbol of unity, faith, and royal power. The people believed that as long as the walls stood strong, their kingdom would remain protected by the gods and by the spirits of their ancestors. The construction of the walls of Benin was a task of great strength, patience, and devotion. There were no modern machines or heavy tools. Everything was done by hand, with wooden spades, iron hose baskets, and raw determination. Men, women, and even children took part in the work. The people dug deep moats, which in the Edo language are called iya, and piled the soil they removed into large embankments that formed the walls. The walls surrounded not only the central city, but also hundreds of surrounding villages. Each village or district had its own section of the wall that connected to the others, forming a continuous line of protection. When all the walls and moats are measured together, they stretch over 16,000 kilometers, making them one of the longest ancient earthworks in human history. The work took hundreds of years to complete, passing from one generation to another. The people did not see it as ordinary labor, but as a sacred calling. Before beginning any section of the wall, priests performed rituals and sacrifices to the gods of the land, asking for protection, guidance, and strength. The workers believed that the spirits of their ancestors watched over them, blessing their efforts to defend their homeland. The walls of Benin were more than just a military defense. They were a symbol of the social order and spiritual strength of the kingdom. Every section of the wall marked the boundaries of a noble family, a guild, or a village chief's territory. The sacred gates that opened into the city were guarded by soldiers and priests who performed rituals before allowing visitors to enter. These gates were not just checkpoints, they were sacred places where the blessings of the gods were called down upon the land. At the heart of the walled city stood the royal palace, a grand complex of courtyards, altars, and halls where the Oba ruled and performed his sacred duties. The palace was decorated with bronze plaques and sculptures that told the story of the kingdom's history, wars, and spiritual beliefs. The Oba was seen as both king and priest, the living link between the people and their gods. To the Edo people, the walls were living things. They were believed to have spiritual energy that connected the physical city to the invisible world of the ancestors. They stood as a sacred boundary that protected not only the people, but also the kingdom's divine essence. Crossing the walls meant entering holy ground, a city of order, beauty, and wisdom. When the first European explorers, especially the Portuguese, reached Benin, around the late 1400s, they were deeply amazed by what they saw. They found a city that was clean, well organized, and highly disciplined. They described wide, straight streets lined with houses made of red earth, neatly thatched roofs, and a grand palace complex at the center. The Portuguese traders compared Benin City to great European cities like Lisbon. They wrote that the Benin people were skilled in governance, trade, and craftsmanship. They noticed that the walls surrounding the city were unlike anything they had ever seen, vast, strong, and sacred. They realized that the Benin Kingdom was not a wild land, as some Europeans had imagined Africa to be. It was a civilization built on intelligence, order, and faith. Through these encounters, Benin began to trade goods like pepper, ivory, and artworks with the Portuguese. Yet, even in their dealings with foreigners, the Edo people remained proud of their traditions. The walls of Benin reminded everyone, local or foreign, that they were entering a land ruled by powerful laws and sacred customs. Sadly, the glory of the sacred walls did not last forever. In 1897, during the period of European colonization, the British Empire sent an armed force known as the British Punitive Expedition to Benin City. The British had grown angry after some of their officials were killed while trying to force trade agreements on the kingdom. Thousands of British soldiers invaded Benin, burning homes, killing people, and destroying the Great Palace. They looted sacred artworks, bronze heads, ivory tusks, and carvings that had been preserved for centuries. Many of these treasures were taken to museums in London and Europe, where they remain till today. The sacred walls were torn down in several places or left to crumble. What had once stood as the pride and protection of an entire people became ruins. The kingdom's spiritual order was broken, and the Oba was exiled. The invasion marked one of the darkest chapters in Benin's history. Even though the sacred walls of Benin were damaged, their spirit has never died. The Edo people still honor their ancestors and remember the greatness of their past. The walls that remain, visible in some parts of Edo State, continue to amaze archaeologists and historians. Studies have shown that these ancient earthworks are larger than the Great Wall of China when measured by total length and volume of earth moved. Modern researchers call them one of the great engineering wonders of the ancient world, built not with machines, but with human hands, unity, and purpose. The story of the walls is a reminder that African civilizations were far advanced long before colonial contact. Today, the people of Benin celebrate their heritage through traditional festivals like the Ige festival, which honors the Oba and renews the spiritual power of the land. The descendants of those who built the walls still speak with pride about their ancestors' wisdom, creativity, and courage.